Hello everyone, welcome to the first ever MaddGodz tutorial video. My name is the Average Joe 93. I'm going to be doing a water cooling tutorial on my GTX 1080 Ti. I'll be using the Kraken G12 AIO bracket and the Corsair H50 AIO on my graphics card itself. This is, I would say, an intermediate level to expert level installation. This is something that beginners, I do not recommend beginners doing. First, we'll be doing some unboxing of the components that I used, a little bit of overview of the tools that I use as well, and yeah, let's get right to it. So here's the Corsair H50 that I am using as the AIO. Just some installation instructions if you're going to actually install it to a CPU. We will not be needing these instructions. That's what this video is for. Keep this warranty card. Won't need that foam. Here are some mounting brackets and hardware used for CPU installation. We will not be needing any of this. We will be using these fan mounting brackets, or mounting screws right here. That'll be going through the fan into the radiator itself. Here's the fan for the H50. We will not be using this fan. I already have a fan installed onto my case right now as an intake fan. I'll be using that fan for the radiator fan as well. Here's the actual AIO itself. Just a typical AIO all-in-one cooler. There's the thermal paste that was on the actual AIO from factory. We will not be using that thermal paste. We'll be using the Arctic Silver thermal paste. Here's the thermal compound we'll be using, the thermal paste. This is the Arctic Silver 5. I highly recommend it for any CPU, GPU installation. Here's the actual Kraken G12 mounting kit. Here is Arctic Clean thermal surface purifier. I use this after I have cleaned the graphics card or CPU, or the GPU or the CPU. It just helps with making the thermal paste adhere to the actual heatsink itself. Here's a Arctic Clean thermal material remover, otherwise known as thermal paste cleaner. I use this instead of lighter fluid. It's just a little bit safer, more meant for just thermal compound cleaning. I use this first after I clean off. I use this while I'm cleaning off the old thermal compound that's on the GPU or CPU itself. And I use a coffee filter to use to wipe off the GPU or CPU. It's non-fibrous, so there's no fibers that can get contaminated onto the graphics card itself. It just makes for easier cleaning. A little unboxing of the Kraken G12 here. It's pretty nice packaging considering it's a $30 product. A lot of foam, a lot of unnecessary foam in my opinion. Make sure your parts stay intact though. Here's the installation manual. You will not be needing that because that's what this video is for. A little overview of how to install the bracket itself. These are all the mounting hardware for the actual installation itself. These are the mounting screws and the raised pads. Here's the actual brackets that go on the Nvidia GPU or the AMD GPU. Comes with some nice zip ties as well. Always can use more zip ties. That's always super awesome, super cool. This tutorial can also be used for AMD installation as well, but we'll be focused on Nvidia. Each one of the brackets are labeled with N or A. A for AMD, N for Nvidia. The Nvidia brackets are slightly different than the AMD ones. The way that the raise screw offset is, it's farther away from the actual GPU mounting portion of it than the AMD counterpart. We'll be using the Nvidia, obviously. Here's the fan for the actual G12 itself. We will be using this. This will be plugged into the motherboard fan header as well. Here's the actual bracket itself. I chose white because I have a white NZXT S340 case. Shows you where the actual fan goes. Make sure label's on top. You want to pull air into the GPU, not away from it. Here's the actual Founders Edition or reference cooler design on the 1080 Ti. This is the actual whole GPU itself. There's going to be a series of really small Phillips head screws in the back of the back plate. That's what we'll be focusing on first. First, you want to get rid of the SLI cover. Use a really small Phillips head screwdriver or jeweler set preferably. I didn't keep track of exactly how many, but there's probably 15 or so of these screws on the back of this. Make sure you use a ground safety strap just in case. Just prevent any unwanted static discharge onto the actual graphics card itself. That is also why I'm using a rubber mat, which is currently my Razer mousepad. Make sure to put the thermal pad back on. Next, you want to remove the IO bracket. This is what actually mounts the GPU to the case. And make sure to put that back on as well when you get done. Next, there's going to be a series of 4mm bolts. You're going to need a 4mm socket and ratchet to get those off. About the same number of those Phillips head screwdrivers as there is on these on these bolts. I used the ratchet itself to break the bolts loose, and then I took the socket out and took them out by hand after that. Last but not least are the 4 GPU mounting screws. There's springs on there, so they will pop out when they're out. Next, we're going to actually remove the GPU from the actual cooler. I recommend being very gentle and using a slight twisting motion. To get it off, it's being held by the thermal paste and the thermal pads that are left on from the VRM and the VRAM and the MOSFETs. You're gonna first have to take out, there's 2 power cables left in from the LEDs for the GeForce GTX LEDs. That's this white one that I'm taking off now. And then the actual fan's got its own power cable that you're gonna have to take off from the GPU board itself. And there's the actual board itself after it's separated from the cooler. You want to make sure you take all the thermal pads off and put them back on the reference cooler. You will be using the ceramic squishies, is what I call them, the ceramic pads for the VRM and the VRAM. You're going to have to put those back on the actual GPU themselves. Without those thermal pads, I got a lot of GPU malfunctions and crashes. Using the thermal material remover on the coffee filter to get rid of the thermal compound that is on the GPU itself from factory installation. Next, we remove the thermal compound from the AIO. We're going to install the fan on the actual Kraken G12 bracket. Typical fan installation, just 4 screws. Make sure label's on top. Next, I'm going to make sure I get the mounting correct on the bracket for the AIO, making sure that the actual water lines aren't being kinked or anything like that. Next, we're gonna install the G12 brackets for the actual AIO onto the graphics card, similar to installing the bracket on the back of the motherboard for a CPU. Purifying the surface for thermal compound installation. We're going to apply the Arctic Silver 5 on there now. P method is what I find best. If unsure of your thermal compound application, go ahead and mount the AIO on there like you normally would, like you're getting ready to install. Then take it off and see your coverage of your thermal compound. If it's good, wipe off that thermal compound, reapply the same way. If not, then try other method. Come straight down onto the actual GPU itself, line up the holes for the actual mounting bracket, and apply the screws. Make sure your water lines are not in the way of your screw installation of your screws. You want to make sure it's snug but not too tight. You can look through the side of the GPU itself and look for coverage. Shine a light through there, make sure there's no light escaping from where the contact should be. And if there isn't, then you probably have a good connection. And here's the final product. Kind of awkward to handle just because of the nature of an AIO onto a graphics card. You also want to make sure that the radiator distance for the hoses is good enough for wherever application you're putting the radiator at, wherever you're putting it. Next, we're going to show some end result. Here it is installed in the case. As you can see, I have put the ceramic squishies, is what I call them, but the ceramic pads back onto the VRAM and the VRM and MOSFETs. Without that, I was getting instability issues. And here are some benchmarks. Idle temps. Benchmark results. Anyways, thank you guys for checking out this installation tutorial. This is our first video. Give it a like and subscribe to our Facebook channel. I'll be leaving a link in the description for the Facebook channel, our Discord channel as well. So yeah guys, happy gaming.